Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefühl with me, AJ. Today, I'm here in Venice on this gloomy, rainy day, but next to me is a very colorful car. This is the all-new Opel or Vauxhall Crossland X. And this is all new because this is on a new platform which is shared with the now new owners of Opel and Vauxhall, that is the PSA group, Peugeot, Citroën and DS. And this platform will also be used for the upcoming new version of the Peugeot 2008. Anyway, we've already covered this car at the launch as well as the premiere, so make sure you watch those videos first to get your first impressions. But here today, I'm going to be driving this car on road to see what it's got. Are you interested? Come on, let's go! Sorry for the umbrella, I know it's a little bit unprofessional, but the rain has picked up, so bear with me a little bit here. At the front, the new Crossland X shares the new Opel's design philosophy. It's very friendly, very cute, very curvy. Round edges is the name of the game for the new Crossland X. Well, looks are subjective. I personally don't find this too exciting. I think it looks too similar to the Mokka X. But we have the LED lights up here. And down here we have the Opel logo, or if you're watching in the UK, that will be a Vauxhall. One strip of chrome just around the badge to highlight and draw more attention towards that. A honeycomb structure texture for the grille. And as you go further down, a silver colored bash plate of sorts to again show that this is a little bit more of an SUV. Although the truth is, even Opel does not brand this as a SUV. They call this a CUV or a crossover utility vehicle. And finally, the bonnet line is quite high. In fact, the new Crossland X, even though it's considerably shorter than the likes of the Astra itself, it's about 10 centimeters taller. The Crossland X is about 4.2 meters long. That's about 13 feet 9 inches. It's about 1.9 meters wide. It's about 6 feet 2 inches. Here on our test car, we have 17-inch rims and we have black cladding around the wheel arches. However, as you will notice, they're completely round wheel arches. They're not squared off like, perhaps in the Seat Ateca. So this again kind of doesn't really give it such a off-road capable SUV kind of a stance. What do you think? As we go further down the side, you have a whole host of personalization options. For example, in our test car, we have the black mirrors. You can have them in white or another color if you wish. And then along the side, you see a design line at the top of the door. Sorry, I can't really point right now. My hands are a bit full. And over the window, you can see a strip of shiny chrome. I think it's a good detailing because it kind of accentuates the roofline, makes it seem very coupe-like. And another thing which is quite interesting is the floating roof itself. As you can see, the C-pillar at the end doesn't really connect all the way down. There's the illusion of it being open, so the roof has an effect that it kind of looks like it's floating. And finally, the taillights sweep around to the back as well. So let us know, what do you think of this design? Here at the back, there are several elements that are happening. At the top, the floating roofline ends at a small spoiler at the top. As you go further down, there's a really wide blue area for the hatch that opens, including the wraparound tail lamps. And then you go further down, you will see the black bumper, which has the parking sensors. This car also has a reversing camera, which is a panoramic reversing camera. I'll show you that once we're inside. And finally, all the way at the bottom, the silver gray color bash plate that we saw in the front is also there at the back. So let us know, what do you think about this design overall? Here we have another true blue, the same color that we have in our test car. But in this model, the roof is white as well as the mirror caps are white. So do you prefer this, or do you prefer the one we have, which is just black? Here we have yet another color. This is white, very shiny, glossy, but at the same time I think it's not too loud. The roof is black as well, and I think this color scheme goes really well because the highlight of the chrome strip over the edge of the windows, I think, makes it a little bit more sporty looking. What do you think? Here we have a different color for the Crossland X. This is a little bit more sober than the one we saw earlier in our test car. It has a much more palatable grey silver body color as well as a black roof panel, the roof coloring. This car gets 17-inch alloys as well. So let us know, do you prefer this kind of a color, or do you like the more louder, brighter colors for the Crossland X? All right, now let's take a look under the hood. So we have a gas-charged strut, opens automatically, some insulation at the top. So the new Crossland X shares a lot of the engines with the Peugeot, Citroën, the PSA group. So you have a range of 3-cylinder turbo petrol engines as well as some diesel engines. They're all front-wheel drive. There is no all-wheel drive option. The weight of this car is about 1,200 kilograms. So the starting range of the engines is a 1.2-liter 3-cylinder engine, which makes 81 horsepower. It's a petrol engine with a 5-speed manual. There is also the 1.2-liter turbo 3-cylinder engine, which makes 130 horsepower. Again, petrol. This is available in the tune of either a 130 horsepower or 110 horsepower, and with a automatic 6-speed or a manual 5 or 6-speed. And finally, there are diesel engines as well. The 1.6-liter turbo 4-cylinder diesel, which either makes 99 horsepower or 120 horsepower. And these come with manual 5 or 6-speed transmissions. And finally, the Crossland X starts at around 17,000 euros, but with a higher trim and a bigger engine, it can go upwards of around 23,000 euros. Here we have the key for the new Crossland X. It's quite chunky, so it's easy to grip. And this has the keyless entry and push button start, so you can keep the key with you and the door unlocks automatically and the wing mirror opens as well. Let's check the door sound once, shall we? Sounds pretty solid, I would say. Maybe give it a 7 on 10. The door opens really wide at the front, and it's a very large opening as well, so it's easy to get inside. Materials up here are a bit hard, which honestly I think when you're paying, this test car is roughly around 23,000 euros. I would expect a little bit better materials up here as well. Materials here are a little bit better. They're soft touch, so there's a little bit more padding, although not by much. Plastics here, and down here again are more hard plastics. There's a nice large door bin to keep some stuff. Let's take a look inside. So the cabin is, I think, fairly neat. Nothing too extravagant, nothing to really write home about. It's very functional. We have fabric and leatherette seats with some really nice detailing around the seams in terms of stitching. The seat is also adjustable for height in terms of the base, height of the entire seat. You can also change the lumbar support as well as reclining. So it's a kind of a combination between electric as well as manual adjustments. You have an armrest in the middle. Anyway, let's hop inside and let's take a closer look. All right. So getting in is fairly easy thanks to the higher ride height because it's an SUV. You can keep your key down here, or there's another slider back here. And the seating position it's okay. Again, because you have a lot of adjustments in the seat, it is pretty easy to get comfortable, but where it does miss out is in the steering. Now the steering can be adjusted for height, but there is no adjustment for reach. And again, for a car which is around 20,000 euros, I would expect it to have a fully adjustable steering column. So sitting inside the cockpit, apart from the fact that you can't really change the adjustment for the steering column, it's a fairly comfortable and decent place to be in. The materials up here on the dashboard are soft touch plastic, and they have a very nice, interesting texture on them. The center console is ever so slightly angled towards the driver, so it's easier to look at them when you're driving. There's a lot of features and functions and a lot of storage spaces, which I'll show you in a little bit. So now let's take a look at the dashboard. On the left, we have an analog tachometer, and on the right, we have an analog speedometer. And in the middle, there is a screen. However, you can't really access any different menus on this screen. You can just go up and down or press the button on the sides, which gives you, for example, your wheel tire pressures, or if you have upcoming services. And there's a lot of other features as well in this new Crossland X. There is also a heads-up display, which pops up when you start the engine. So this will give you your speed. It also has a traffic sign recognition software, so it will tell you the speed limit and any other signs on the road that it captures. It also gives you commands on your navigation, so it tells you if you have to take an upcoming exit. We have some settings to change the heads-up display as well. You can make it go up or down in terms of the projected image, as well as dim it and make it brighter. The steering wheel has several functions and buttons on them. For example, on the left-hand side, you have buttons for your cruise control, as well as a button for the heated steering grip. And on the right side, we have the voice command button, the telephone button, and navigation buttons for the audio controls on the infotainment system. Speaking of the infotainment system, let's take a closer look at that. And by the way, in case on the final video it seems to be flickering, don't get worried, it's just because of the frame rate. In real life, when you look at this, it's completely smooth. In fact, it's very smooth in terms of reaction time. You have to pinch in order to zoom in and zoom out. Unfortunately, there is no separate knob in order to do that. But apart from that, we have some hotkey buttons on the bottom to access your audio, and then for the navigation and for the telephone, so you can connect your phone with Bluetooth as well as Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. If you select this button over here, as you can see, there are some settings that you can change. For example, changing the units and things like that. And there's also some settings to operate your driver assistance functions. For example, the park assist, the blind spot monitoring systems, as well as changing the ambient lighting. And there's even a driver's attention warning system. So it'll recognize if you're feeling drowsy, and it will give you a warning sound to wake you up, hopefully to wake you up. And some other light features like welcome lighting and guide me home lighting. There's also other features such as lane keep assist. So overall, this car is pretty feature packed, and there are some things, which are a little bit omitted, like the steering column adjustment. But let us know, what do you guys think? Now let's take a look at the rear view camera. So like I mentioned when I was showing you guys the exterior, you can change the view to a zoom view, which is kind of like a top-down view, or a 180-degree view, more of like a panoramic view, and of course the standard view. So this, along with the parking sensors, makes this car very easy to maneuver in tight city spaces. The guidelines also are dynamic, so it gives you a good idea of which direction you're heading into as well. Now let's take a look at the climate control unit. So you can turn it on here, and you can also access some of the basic settings with the touchscreen if you want. But further down here you see we have seat heating button for the front two seats, and it's a dual zone. There is defoggers, heated windshield, and a circulation button. Further down, we have a couple USB ports to charge your phone or to connect it with the Android Auto Apple CarPlay. A 12-volt power socket, which you can also get with this USB adapter, so you get a couple more USB ports. And down here is a inductive phone charger, a wireless phone charger, so you can just drop your phone and it starts charging. And up here we have the button to turn off the ESC, and we have a button to turn off the lane keeping assist, auto shut off, and parking sensors. And this is the 6-speed automatic, and you have a manumatic mode, so if you put it all the way down to drive and flick it to the left, you can go up and down to shift up and down. There is no paddle shifters, and this also gets the yellow contrast stitching that we saw on the steering wheel. You have a couple beverage holders and the handbrake. Now the handbrake is a bit fiddly to use because the button is over here, and for some reason it's not so easy, as you can see, to release it. You kind of have to lift it and then push the button. It takes some getting used to. I don't think is there anything wrong, but you have to kind of lift it again to release it. And over here you have a slider which reveals another storage compartment large enough to fit your key and your phone and things like that. The armrest is attached not to the central console but to the driver's seat, so it's fairly firm, but again it's just only for the driver's seat. Okay, now let's take a look in the back. Well, actually the door doesn't open all that wide, and the opening is actually quite narrow, so getting in large child seats might be a bit tricky. Again, the materials on the door are pretty hard. There is a little bit of padding. Actually, no, I take that back. There is no padding on the armrest as well. Anyway, let's hop inside. A little bit of a squeeze, but not so much lower because, again, the ride height is a bit high. I am 5'8" or 1.7 meters, and this seat is set to my driving position. So as you can see, I have a generous amount of knee room. Over here, there is also a pouch to keep your phone or your iPad, things like that. I also have a generous amount of headroom. Now, these seats are pretty interesting, actually. First of all, if you're not happy with a upright seating position, you can pull the tab back here and recline it to be more comfortable. And let me show you something even more interesting. The seat itself, both this side and that side, can slide forward and back, like so, to free up more luggage space in the back. The seats fold in a 60-40 fashion. That's quite obvious, but if you want, you can even just fold the center down as a ski hatch, or to double it as a armrest with some cup holders. And if you're sitting in the middle seat, as I shall demonstrate now, it's actually not too bad because the seat bench is quite flat, so you don't feel like you're sitting on a hump. The transmission tunnel at your feet is also fairly small, so there's plenty of space for your feet. And another interesting thing is the seat belt for the middle passenger is a 3-point harness which comes from the top. Now let's take a look in the back. There's a small button which releases the hatch. You can easily get the parcel shelf out of the way, like so. When I say easily, it's a bit tricky to get out with one hand. Speaking of tricky, this false floor also, you kind of have to manhandle it when you're moving it in and out because it's a bit cumbersome to handle. But if you remove this, you get about 520 liters of space over here. It's a very usable space, I can give it that. It's very flat and it's very rectangular. Of course, in this position, there's a larger loading lip. but you can also flip the seats down, as I showed you earlier. And if you put the floor back in, then you would get a flat loading area. Alright, so now let's take a spin in the new Crossland X. First impressions? Well, let's start off with the seats. These seats are actually fairly comfortable. They're a little bit on the firmer side, but I think that aids when you're driving longer distances because it's more supportive and it doesn't lead to any backaches or things like that. As I showed you earlier, you can really change the settings. There's a lot of settings that you can personalize. You can change the reclining, you can change the elevation of the base, you can change the height of the entire seat. You can even pull out and extend the lower under thigh support as well. Apart from that, the seating position is okay. I'm not completely happy with it, and that's probably because there isn't any adjustment in the steering wheel, because I kind of prefer if I could have the steering wheel a little bit closer to me, because the way the pedals and the steering is placed, they're quite close together. But apart from that, you have really good visibility because it's a taller body. You have large windows on the sides and a large windscreen, so it's really easy to navigate in the city. Now this SUV, though it's an SUV, or rather a CUV, a crossover utility vehicle, it's not really meant to be going off-road. In fact, you only get this car in front-wheel drive. You do not have the option of having an all-wheel drive. So this is more of an urban SUV or an urban crossover. So the best place to test it would be here in these city streets or in these lanes just outside of the city. And in this regard, it has a lot of useful features. For example, it has automatic emergency braking. It has lane keeping assist. It even has things like Wi-Fi, so you can connect phones if you have a data connection. And you can, if you have kids in the back, then they can, be occupied for hours and they won't bother you when you're driving. And this also has the OnStar call center option. So you can use this, there's a button up here, you can press it when you're driving, and in case you have had an accident, or if you just require assistance, you can even book hotels with this system. In fact, you can watch Brian's review of the new Insignia that he did about a month ago, where he actually tested this live on camera and spoke with a representative from the OnStar call center, and you can really understand and get a good idea of how this call center, the service works. And I think it's really useful. Apart from that, we are driving the 1.2 liter turbo 3-cylinder petrol engine, which makes 110 horsepower. This comes mated to a 6-speed automatic. You can also get a 6-speed manual or even a 5-speed manual, depending on the specification that you have for the engine and transmission. And the 3-cylinder engines always have this 3-cylinder thrum, and you can hear it a little bit, but it's not necessarily a bad sound, and it kind of makes it a little bit more exciting. But on the other hand, it is fairly smooth. You don't really hear it when you're going at low RPMs, when you're just ambling around in traffic like this. It's very smooth. The 6-speed automatic as well operates really gently. There's no sudden surges, and it doesn't take too much time to shift between gears and things like that. So overall, it's a pretty good system. It works pretty well. Apart from that, when you put your foot down and you want to accelerate really fast, that's when the gearbox takes a little bit of a time, takes a second to shift down and to let the revs build up. And so it's not really a sporty car to drive if you want to drive really well. Drive spiritedly. But on the other hand, what it does have is good steering feel, which I was actually quite surprised. It's the steering size, the size of the steering wheel itself is, it's not too small, it's not too large. So you get a good idea of how the wheels are doing on the road, and it has decent weight, it has decent feedback as well. So overall it's a good steering system. The rack itself is not necessarily a fast rack, so there's still quite a few turns lock to lock, but on the whole, yeah, it's got good feedback. Apart from that, the navigation system gives you commands for where you're supposed to turn off on the heads-up display. Now, because the screen in the middle doesn't really have any other options apart from, giving you the information about your mileage and your speed and things like that, or the information about your cruise control, etc. The navigation and the speed and these commands are displayed on the heads-up display. And if you've seen my video of the Volvo V90 Cross Country that I drove earlier this year, you will know that I really like heads-up displays. Now, although this system is not as good as the system in the Volvo, of course it's a much more budget-oriented car. There's actually another smaller screen which comes up, and the projection of the heads-up display is projected onto that smaller screen rather than onto the windshield itself. So in that sense, it's a pseudo heads-up display, I would say. But because you have the adjustment of making it go up or down, it's really useful. The cabin is also fairly well insulated. I can't really report on how it is on the highway right now. We will get onto the highway in a little bit and then test out the sound and the insulation there. But here we're going about 50 to 60 here on these country lanes, and the ride is smooth, it's comfortable, the body doesn't really pitch, it's pretty much in good control, and the sound is also really well insulated. You don't hear the engine at all, honestly, when you're just going around at city speeds, and you don't hear the wind or the traffic around you as well. Right now it says we're getting about 8.2 liters for 100 kilometers, which is way too much for a 1.2 3-cylinder turbo. And it is going to go down because we just started off, and I will come back and report, and we will see if it's better in a little bit. So a quick update on the mileage that we're getting since we've been driving for a little bit longer now. Now it says 7.5 liters for 100 kilometers, so it's definitely getting better. And we are heading out onto the Autostrada, the highway right now, and we will see if it gets even better going forward. So like I was saying earlier, when I'm going around these corners, I can notice that it is fairly stable and planted, so it's not really a problem. Wait a minute, there's a toll. I think I have the ticket, so let's see. If I don't have the ticket, I think that's the ticket, so it's okay. If not, then you can see AJ getting into a little bit of trouble. Oh, there we go, no problem. So, where was that? Yes. So the body control is fairly good, and the steering feel is also, fairly good. So I think overall this car behaves really well out on the highway as well, or rather on fast sweeping country roads, as well as in tight city spaces. And here we go. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time for the 110 horsepower engine 3-cylinder to pick up pace. It's certainly not very fast, it's certainly not a quick car, and so it's struggling to get up to 130. There we go. Let me set the cruise control now. There's a little switch on the steering wheel which lets you do that. Although the cruise control is not a adaptive cruise control, which kind of is surprising to me because this car does get emergency braking, which means there is some hardware which is like a sensor, a distance sensor, a radar sensor for things in the front. So I don't know how it makes sense to have that for emergency braking, but not for adaptive cruise control. But I guess, it's because it does only one function. Maybe there's different types of sensors, so it's a little bit cheaper, I guess. But I also notice now that the gearbox is downshifting every so often to try to accelerate again and get back up to 130. So while this engine is strong enough between 50 to 80 when you're going on country lanes, 130 non-stop for a long time on the highway might strain it a little bit. And another thing I'm noticing now is this car is quite easily upset by crosswinds. Now I'm going to try to demonstrate this as safe as possible, so maybe you can see. Because the steering wheel is a little bit twitchy, I can notice that, and I have to work a little bit every now and then to keep it in line. And of course you have blind spot monitoring and lane keeping assist, so it obviously helps you on the highway if you're straying too far off. You get a notification for that and an alert for the blind spot monitor. And another thing which I'm noticing is it's actually quite loud in here. And it's not the tire noise as such, it's not the engine noise either, it's just the wind noise. There is a considerable amount of wind noise, even with the air conditioning off. It's the noise from outside that I'm hearing. Maybe it's just a windy day, and maybe that's why also the car is kind of, moving around on the road because of the crosswinds. But I must say I'm not that impressed with the Crossland X's highway mannerisms. But we're still getting pretty decent economy. It's a 7.6 liters for 100 kilometers, so yes, this is okay. If you want something a little bit more powerful, this engine also comes in the state of tune of 130 horsepower, excuse me. And you also have the diesel engines as well, which will definitely give even better fuel economy. Thankfully, it's not raining anymore, so I can hop out and show you another color that we have here at the event for the Crossland X. This is the red one, like the one we saw in the premiere, so make sure you go and watch that video as well. And this also has 17-inch alloys and a black roof and mirror. So, which one do you prefer? Anyway, let's summarize today's drive of the Crossland X. Well, I think there are certainly a good balance of pros and cons. On the one hand, I think the design is very interesting. It's very round, it's very balloon-like in some way, but I think a lot of people will find that appealing because, of course, looks is very subjective. It has a lot of safety features like emergency braking, blind spot detecting. It has the lane keeping assist, a reversing camera, things like this, and let's not forget the heads-up display as well. But somewhere here and there, the plastics, the material used in the dashboard, as well as the fact that the steering column cannot be adjusted for reach, these are some things that I feel that if you're paying 20,000 euros, you should be able to get in a car. But in the end, it still has its own appeal, and this is again a very urban-oriented kind of an SUV. So a lot of people won't be using this off-road. So a 3-cylinder front-wheel drive layout was more than enough for that as well. Overall, I think if you're in the market for a small SUV, such as the Renault Captur or the Peugeot 2008, well, there's something else that you should definitely consider. Thanks for watching, and leave your comments down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, because we always upload pictures from all the events that we're working on, so you always get a sneak peek at what's coming up ahead. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time.